Welcome to Leading Complexity. This is where we explore the art of leading organization in today's complex, hyper-competitive landscape. In each episode, we will explore cutting-edge strategies with some of the foremost thinkers in leadership. Discover how to make your organization thrive and lead in a constantly evolving world. My name is Tomas Björkholm, and with me I have Göthe. In our first episode, we will listen to the insightful conversation with Esther Derby, a pioneer in organizational dynamics. Well, Michael, how do you know Esther?
Well, she has been an influence for me since a long time. I got her book a long time ago, Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great. I think it came out already 2006 or something like that, so early in the Agile days. And it has been kind of really resourceful kind of toolkit for improving Agile teams. There's so many kind of tips and tricks on how to have better retrospectives. And that's kind of a common complaint that we stopped doing retrospective. They're not inspiring, or we have the same problems, or we don't get the benefit from it. But if you stop continuously improving, well, that's not Agile. So I think this has been a main inspiration for me as supporting teams. What about you, Thomas? How do you relate to Esther?
I mean, everyone been into Agile for some time have, of course, seen that book or read it even. But I also taken 2 classes with her. For instance, a problem-solving leadership, where she was joining up with Johanna Rothman and Jerry Weinberg. Really interesting class. It's almost a week and very interactive and learning understanding the system around an organization leadership. I also took the class Coaching Beyond the Teams, where she was working together with Don Gray. Also really interesting class. I learned a lot about how to coach kind of outside your area of influence and how to do that. I think Esther is really interesting, and I had the fortune to have an interview with her. So let's look at that. Okay, welcome to this video, and with me today I have Esther Derby. We are very happy to have you in the program this year, the Leading Complexity program. So welcome to the program, Esther.
Thank you. I'm super happy that you invited me. It's a topic I care a lot about, and it's nice to be invited.
And we are so happy that you said yes. So, since you like this topic very much about complexity, what is complexity for you? Could you explain complexity to the audience?
I'm going to come at it through a contrast. So we have a history in, Western business of thinking of things in a very mechanistic way, right? Very deterministic, very mechanistic. And while that is an appropriate model in certain situations, in real life, things are not deterministic. There's multiple entwined causes for everything. And we cannot determine what is going to happen. We can only create the conditions for something useful to emerge. So I think it's the contrast between a factory and a forest. Right? You can build a factory to have a particular output. When you're creating a forest, you cannot predict exactly what it's going to be like, but you can pay close attention to the conditions that exist and shape those conditions so that something is likely to emerge.
So kind of creating the environment you can't control, but you can help.
Yeah, you can certainly influence.
Certainly influence, but not control. Okay, like that. So the program is called Leading in Complexity, and this could be interpreted in different ways. For instance, it could be like, how can you be thriving in a complex environment, which most of the companies today are living in? But it could also be leader, how you could be a leader in a complex environment. How would you interpret it, and do you have any special advices?
Well, I think for leaders in complexity, there's a different set of skills we need to attend to. And so that's what I often talk about when I talk about leading in complexity, is like, what are the things we need to attend to? And what are the skills we need to have in order to appropriately attend to those? And I think what you attend to is different depending on where you are in the organization, what your role is in the organization. So if you're in a senior role, you're attending to kind of the macro level, setting conditions for the organization. Who are our customers? What is the relationship we want to have with our customers? What behaviors broadly are acceptable and which ones won't be tolerated? How do we maintain fiscal responsibility? So these very broad things, what direction are we going in? What problem are we solving for what group of people? If you're in what I think about as the sort of an enabling or enhancing role, then your concerns are very different, right? Because you're living within this set of conditions, and your job then is to create the conditions where people and teams can create great products and do great work. And looking at the system, some parts of which might be linear, to enhance the ability to provide great services and products. And if you're doing the work, then you need to be attending to the conditions for your team, right? And what's the environment like within your team? What's our information environment like? What's our safety environment like? What's our social environment like? Is there anything in the physical environment we could shift?
Interesting. So your session will be November 7th, which
Yes.
is quite far in the future already.
Feels
or
that way
right
now.
Yes,
Yeah.
many things can change, but can you give us some sort of tips about what it will be about and what we can bring with us from it?
Well, we're going to explore what complexity looks like from different vantage points in the organization, what you can do to create the conditions for good work to happen, because performance is an emergent property of the people in their environment. And we're going to look at the specific skills that you might want to develop in order to lead in that sort of situation. To lead where you're not necessarily directing people, but you're setting a direction and creating the constraints so people can self-organize.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds easy, but I guess it's much harder than it sounds. So for everyone seeing this, sorry.
Everything's easy when you know how to do it.
Yeah.
And nothing's easy when you don't.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything particularly hugely difficult in it, but it's a different way of seeing. It's a different way of being aware, and it's a different way of acting. It's often more indirect than many people in leadership positions are used to.
Yeah. And since I'm taking at least 2 classes with you, I must say that if anyone is able to tell how to do this in a simple and easy way, I think it's you. And you have a lot of experience from it. So for everyone listening to this, please participate. Come and listen to Esther November 7th. Thank you very much for this interview.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. we are all doing that. Thank you.
Okay, that was super interesting, and I'm envious of you that got to interview her. So she talked about this metaphor of mechanistic versus forest. What is your kind of take on that?
Well, my understanding is that in the mechanic way, like in a factory, you can, or machinery, you can really pre-program, and things will happen because they happen. It's a very linear thinking there. So you know that if I do A, I will get B. And kind of when we started to organize ourselves in much bigger enterprises, like 100 years ago, it was, the idea was, or the most interesting thing that was happening at that time was the machineries. So it was quite logical that we built up our way of our organizations and our way of leading in the same way. That is how I understand what she's talking about. And the difference is today we're starting to understand that the organization is much more complex and harder to understand than that. So we must see it as a forest or as a garden, where yes, we can influence, we can do differences, we can change the environment kind of, and by doing that we can get a forest that is closer to what we're expecting, but it's not linear. We have to experiment and learn and see what happens. Do you have another understanding of what she was talking about?
No, I think that's a great metaphor, that we're building industrial kind of society based on the mechanistic way of thinking, mechanics. We do A, we get B, so we have the industrial revolution, etc., which has given us great prosperity. But nowadays things are changing so fast. There's so much uncertainty. There's so much unknowns even. So we have to think more of a complex system, and I think metaphor for that is forest or gardens. And it's a little counterintuitive because as humans, we've lived in forests forever, so we know how to deal with that kind of intuitively as well. But I think the main problem is this kind of complexity added by people that makes it even more difficult to kind of lead and handle in. And that's kind of the purpose behind the whole program, the series here, that we want to explore this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. She also mentioned this performance is an emergent property. How do you interpret that?
Yes, so in the traditional organizations, there's something called performance management. And when we have also these Agile HR classes, we kind of challenge, can you really manage performance? Like, Thomas, can I tell you to increase the profit now, or sell more, or whatever?
No problem, I have the magic wand.
Yeah. So I also have a sports background, and I compare it to that. It's the same thing, like if you're playing soccer, like play better, score more goals, etc. That's not how you can increase the performance. It's the environment that you create around the players. So for a sport or athlete or football player, you have to kind of optimize everything. You have to, your physics, your tactics, your understanding of the game, of course, the skills of the game itself, what you eat, sleep, and the surroundings around you, like the teammates, the culture, the atmosphere in the team, that you have support in coaches, physiotherapists, maybe family even. So all of that kind of makes the performance kind of emerge from all those circumstances. So it's not something you really can manage, but as Esther says, you can influence it for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, do you have any other highlights?
Well, for me, one thing was that she said at the end there that complexity is like anything else. It's difficult when you don't know how. It's easy when you know how to. But I think there's one pitfall here, because we can quite easily understand what complexity is about, like intellectually. So we kind of think, oh, we got it. We cannot do command and control. We have to work with environment. So we have to work with people. Okay, I get it. But then when we go out there, first of all, we kind of have in our back of minds, or we kind of train to lead with kind of directives and managing and controlling. So the shift is much bigger than we think. Also, it requires this different kind of mindset of thinking about and understanding the complexity, not jumping into solutions or directing, etc. So yeah, it's easy in a way. It's easy to understand, but I think it's something that we need to actually practice a lot.
So
what
it's like what you mentioned before, that actually we knew this much better 100 years ago than we do now, because we were more used to be in a forest and understand the complexity in the nature.
Yeah, and then we've been trained in the industrial revolutions to maybe take order or have everything organized or telling people what to do, etc. So we kind of have to unlearn a bit of that and get back to what we know kind of more intuitively.
Yeah.
What was your highlights or main takeaway?
Well, I like the way she put it, like there were different kind of leaderships in an organization. Like we had the senior people, they were working on the macro level and working on the conditions on that level. For instance, making sure that we take care of the financial responsibility and giving directions to the whole company. And since I know that she's very much for this idea that we should not delegate tasks, we should delegate problems. So then the senior people will then very much tell in what are the most important problems to solve, not implement this, but being clear about this is more important than that one is more important than that one. Like stack ranking or ordering the problem. So it's very clear for everyone to understand exactly which problem should I focus on more and which one should I focus on less.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to my previous point on kind of understanding this, but not kind of doing it. I've seen numerous of times when leaders say, "Oh, we want to have more empowered teams. Of course, they should work with problems. We delegate the problems. They should be goal oriented. Please help us kind of establish that." And the next kind of thing that happens is now do this.
Yeah, implement this.
Exactly. So they have the understanding, but then they revert back to old habits. So that's why we need to train as athletes. It's not easy to kind of just shift your behavior, even if you have a good understanding. So we're really looking forward to kind of explore this in the program in the fall, and yeah, diving into Esther's and the others.
Yes, definitely. And everyone listening, if you're curious and want to learn more from Esther, you have your possibility to interact with her, ask questions and get deeper understanding in what she's talking about. Her session in the Leading Complexity program will be on November 7th. And the name of her masterclass is 5 Keys for Leading in Complexity. And how do you do if you want to get the possibility to have this interaction with her?
So go to leadingcomplexity.com and register and use the code CRISPFriend to get 10% off, and hope to see you in the fall.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for this episode.